European Council President Antonio Costa and British Prime Minister Andy Burnham are in Kyiv to mark Ukraine's 35th Independence Day. 4.5 years into the conflict with Russia, Ukraine has been facing a growing bombing campaign from Moscow. So also this Monday, the Coalition of the Willing will chair a meeting with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy to discuss ways to boost international support. Ellen Gainsford explains.
Representing the Coalition of the Willing, Andy Burnham is visiting Kyiv this Monday for his first foreign trip as Prime Minister. He'll be co-chairing a meeting of the group, with French and German leaders joining virtually as Ukraine celebrates its Independence Day. Ahead of the visit, Burnham reiterated the UK's support for Ukraine, continuing the strong stance against Russia taken by his predecessor, Keir Starmer.
On Ukraine's 35th anniversary of independence, the Ukrainian people should be in no doubt the UK is behind you today and for as long as it takes.
The founding members of the Coalition of the Willing, the UK and France, have both recently promised further material support to Kyiv. Andy Burnham is set to announce that British defence firm MBDA can release classified information to Kyiv regarding the long-range Scalp missile to help Ukraine set up local production of the Franco-British projectile, while French President Emmanuel Macron has pledged to deliver more interceptor missiles. In a televised address delivered for Independence Day, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy remained defiant.
Ukraine yearns for peace, but is not prepared to simply give up. Over these 35 years, we have heard countless predictions about our future. They said the state would fail, that we would not withstand the shocks of February 24th, that we would last only a matter of days. Yet we have held firm all this time.
Zelenskyy is continuing to request more Patriot interceptors, citing a sharp drop in deliveries since 2023. These long-range US missiles are the most successful way to shoot down incoming ballistic attacks from Russia. But following its own conflict with Iran, the US has become more reluctant to part with them. Moscow has upped its bombing campaign in recent weeks, including against civilian targets, and on Friday hit a shopping centre, killing at least 16 people.
We're going to talk more about what kind of international military aid there might be coming for Ukraine with Samantha de Bendern, an associate fellow at Chatham House. Samantha, thanks for taking the time to speak to us. European leaders not only traveling to Kyiv to show their support today, but also to announce what are meant to be concrete steps to help Ukraine defend itself. Tell us a bit more about what kind of things we can expect today.
Well, there are two main things. President Macron promised last week to send more interceptor missiles for Ukraine. Now, these are vitally important. As we've seen over the last few weeks, Russia has been intensifying its missile attacks, in particular on Ukraine, because it knows that Ukraine has run out of Patriot missiles, which are the anti-missile defense systems that they got from the United States. And today, Andy Burnham, the British Prime Minister, in a really strong show of solidarity to Kyiv, has travelled to Kyiv and will be announcing that Kyiv will be allowed to produce its own Storm Shadow Scalp missiles. Now, these are not defense missiles. These are offensive missiles. The fact that Andy Burnham is prepared to allow the blueprints to be given to Kyiv is a real show of confidence, because you have to remember that now that Kyiv is on the brink of acquiring these blueprints, it makes it vitally important for Europe to ensure that Ukraine remains free and independent. I don't think anyone would want those blueprints to fall into Russian hands should Ukraine not prevail on the battlefield. So this is a strong message. I presume that the Coalition of the Willing understand the importance that the more we help Ukraine, the more we have to be determined to help Ukraine secure a victory against Russia.
Indeed. And with these two huge moves from both the European Union, France and the UK, the real question is will this be enough to ensure victory for Ukraine?
First of all, we need to understand what victory means at this point. I think there is an unspoken consensus that regaining all Ukrainian territory in the 1991 borders is not an immediate aim, nor is it immediately possible. Victory would mean that Russia actually stops bombing Ukraine and that we can get into some kind of peace talk with Russia over how to secure a relatively lasting peace. Is this enough? Absolutely not. There's a whole collective of people in France and the UK and other European member states who have been calling for Allied planes to defend Ukraine's skies. This does not mean entering into direct conflict with Russia. This would not mean shooting down planes with Russian pilots in them. This would mean intercepting incoming missiles and potentially drones over Ukrainian airspace, not only to protect Ukraine, but to protect European countries as well, where drones and missile debris have fallen recently. It is incomprehensible to me and to all those, including prominent politicians in a number of European member states, why we cannot do this. This would not make us any more co-belligerents than giving interceptor missiles or indeed offensive missiles and systems to Ukraine would be. But so far, there is an unwillingness to go any further to really protecting Ukraine's sky.
And all of this is coming, of course, as Russia has been pounding Kyiv with ballistic missiles, an increase in ballistic missiles recently. We were talking earlier about Ukraine having this chronic shortage of these Patriot air defense interceptors, which are U.S. made. What kind of effect is the U.S. not being more forthcoming with those interceptors having on this war at the moment?
Well, it's having a very, very detrimental effect. Ukraine today is unable to protect itself adequately from incoming ballistic missiles. The Patriot systems were helping it, and the Patriot systems is what helped protect and defend Kyiv over the 4.5 years of this war. Now, the United States had made noises saying that it was prepared to allow Ukraine to produce Patriot missiles on Ukrainian soil. This has since come under question. I also want to point out that the US has used nearly half of its existing stock of Patriot missiles in the war against Iran. It has used over 1,000 Patriot missiles since February 2026. All in all, it gave about 60 missiles to Ukraine since the beginning of the war. We can see the disproportionate numbers here. These 60 Patriot missiles actually went a long way to protect Ukraine. What happened now is that the United States is running low on its own existing stockpile of Patriots, which will make it even more difficult to give or even to sell such missiles to Ukraine. Zelenskyy has actually said he would be prepared to buy Patriots, but the U.S. stocks are actually running low right now.
Samantha, just to wrap up, and I know it's difficult to say or to project, but in your opinion, how bad, how serious is the situation for Ukraine at the moment?
I think it's serious. I think this winter is what a lot of Ukrainians are dreading. I'd like to remind viewers that last winter, Ukraine literally froze because attacks on energy infrastructure meant that a lot of houses went without heating when the temperatures were plunging to -10, -20 degrees centigrade. Things are looking very tense indeed, but you have to remember that Ukraine has shown remarkable innovation in both the development of its drone warfare, the development of its own offensive missiles. It has been wearing down Russia's oil and gas infrastructure, Russia's refinery potential. It has now been attacking in logistical infrastructures in Russia. And this is having a direct effect on the Russian economy. But I can't say that things are looking up for Ukraine. They are holding the front line, but the cities are suffering.
Samantha, thank you for that. Samantha de Bendern, an associate fellow at Chatham House.